Well, obviously, it's a very busy week in college hoops. I feel like I've seen this man on my TV more than I've seen, like, my family this week, because he's doing everything, and he's squeezing in a couple minutes for us this morning after he was in studio for Maryland Villanova on Sunday. He is Coach Seth Greenberg, and he's back with us now here on GCR. Coach, it's Glenn. It's great to catch up with you. Happy Thanksgiving to you. Thanks for taking a couple of minutes for us.
Well, back at you, and it's a good time right now. I'll tell you one thing, Maryland's got a chance to be pretty good, and it's a great time of the year with feast week and great games each and every night, so life is good.
Yeah, these late nights and great games, no doubt about it. Coach, you mentioned Maryland, so I know the affinity that you have for Baltimore basketball players. I know you talk about the state of Baltimore, and we've talked a lot over the years about the great Malcolm Delaney, but Derik Queen, man, is a different type. He's not the traditional Baltimore guy, right? Like, he's not undersized.
He's not a guard.
Right?
He's not a guard.
Right.
Baltimore. I live and die with Baltimore guards, but I'll tell you one thing. He's got the kind of trickeration and game and feel and of a Baltimore guard. He's just in a big body. I mean, like the plays he made down the stretch, big time.
No doubt, right? And I think that's what's so encouraging is, like, that turnaround jumper is one of my favorite Maryland basketball things that I've seen in years, because to me, that's with the game on the line, this is proof that this guy can be not just the interior presence, but a potential closer as well. And if this is what we're seeing in November, I get that it's likely only going to be 1 year, but I think that what we saw on Sunday is extraordinarily encouraging for what this might look like even as quickly as January and February.
Yeah, I think the hardest thing for young players in general is January and February until you hit the wall, maybe, sometime in February, because, each and every game is not a game. It's an event when you play in that conference. And he's going to have to be good each and every night for them to be good. But you're watching his hands and his footwork and how he uses his body and how he targets and how he gets angles and how Kevin uses him all over the floor and the stuff that they're running across the board, whether it's for Rodney or Gillespie, or Julian. And the good thing is to have Julian beside him, because he's got a guy that, if Julian plays the way he played the last few games, he's got a guy beside him that can take a little heat off him. Now that's a two-headed monster that's hard to play against.
No doubt about it, right? And look, they also have been making free throws a little bit more, which has been encouraging. There were a couple down the stretch that didn't go, but they were 14 of 19 for the game. I think that stands out as well for a team that's going to work inside. We know that it works. Like, the Big Ten's been a big man league, right? But I think the knock has always been, Coach, that once you get into March, you don't want to be a team that relies on big men. I don't know if we're too dismissive of that. Can this be a team that can be better in March than other Big Ten teams have been in recent seasons?
I mean, there was a Big Ten team last year with a big guy that went to the championship game.
That is true. That is true.
Look, it's hard to win in March. And the Big Ten has struggled a little bit in March. Everyone says it's too big, it's too slow. It's amazing, though. I mean, they say it's in March, but I tell you, the Big Ten kicks everyone's tail in November and December. So, like, for all the people that complain about all the teams the Big Ten gets in the NCAA tournament, then beat their rear ends in November and December, because if you beat them in November and December, they won't get as many teams in the tournament.
That's a fact.
But the league has done well in the non-conference. You build your NCAA tournament resume in November and December as a conference. And that's what the Big Ten's been able to do.
He is Seth Greenberg. He's with us here on GCR. Maryland back in action this afternoon. Seth, if I could, I think the concern maybe that we've seen in the early portion of the schedule is maybe the depth for Maryland, where, like Deshaun Harris-Smith has now gone to the bench but hasn't given them a ton offensively, maybe a little bit in ball handling that's helpful. They haven't gotten a ton of minutes from other guys. How concerned would you be about their depth going into conference play? Do we make too much of that?
Yeah, I think it's a factor if you have injuries. If you stay healthy, it's not as much a factor. It's a factor when you travel cross country to play a game.
And they got to do that now in the Big Ten, obviously.
Yeah. So I think if you can get a good 7-man rotation, I think you're fine. I think, let's face it, Deshaun Harris-Smith, he's got to give him, because he's got versatile minutes. He can kind of help you in a couple of positions, which is really, really important. But, stay out of foul trouble, stay healthy. If you can develop into a 7-man rotation, then all of a sudden, you have a chance. You have a chance. So look, those guys on the bench got to give you 10 minutes a game. You got to get 2 or 3 guys that can give you 10 minutes a game. And the great Terry Holland, who I worked for at Virginia, used to say, like, your bench guys have to do one of 2 things. They got to be tempo changers, or they got to be mistake-free players. And I think they can establish some mistake-free players from, those guys, coming off the bench, whether it's the kid from New Zealand that gives them a couple of minutes. They've got guys that potentially can help them to some extent, a little bit, and be functional.
You mentioned Rodney Rice a minute ago, who, like you, obviously has history at Virginia Tech. I think there was a lot of questions about what Rodney Rice was going to be able to offer this team. I've been blown away by how seamless it's been for him coming in and sort of being the guy that everybody thought he was going to be in the past. What impresses you most about him, and how good can that backcourt duo of he and Jakobi Gillespie be?
Look, he's older. I mean, when he was a young kid when he was at Virginia Tech, probably a little immature, probably thought college basketball was going to be easier than it was. He was held accountable. He had to defend. He had to do other things that impact winning. I think young players don't even understand what impacts winning. Sitting out and getting older, being more mature, continuing to be coached, allowing himself to be coached, realizing what he didn't know maybe, were all good things for him. So, I think that's a positive. Look, the guy can score. He's got to defend consistently. He's got to make good decisions. But, what he can do is he can score. And, they do need that. Obviously Gillespie is terrific. But, you need if you want to utilize those bigs, you need floor gamers and shot makers. And Rodney Rice, he fits both of those. He has a floor game and he can make shots. So, if he's knocking down threes like the last 3 games, I think he's like 8 for like 18 from the 3.
Mm-hmm.
If he's making 3-point shots, what does that do? It opens up more space. And, and Gillespie can make shots. That opens up more space. Then when you have those things happening, then the game becomes easy for other people. And that's, that's the whole deal, man. Yeah. That's the whole deal. I mean, now there's space for Miguel to drive it, and there's space for Queen to work his man, back in back downs and playing off the elbow. There's space for Julian to use his quickness. So he can do that and continue to defend and do those things. I mean, obviously he's capable, and I think he's grown up.
You've used the word defend a couple times, right? And I feel like that's been the sort of staple of Kevin Willard since he arrived. That even a year ago, when the offense was miserable, right, and they were one of the worst shooting teams in the entire country, they were still buying in and selling out. And I feel like that's the thing that we've just kind of counted on. Maybe it hasn't been outstanding or exemplary early on, but I feel like it's part of the reason why we're so high on this team and think there is an upside is because we're counting on that to continue from a Kevin Willard team.
Oh, his teams are going to guard, and his teams are going to be assertive, and his teams are going to create turnovers and a little bit of chaos at times. The hardest thing, you got a young kid like Queen who's going to be putting a ton of ball screens when he gets in the league, or even off-ball screens. That's the biggest adjustment for young players is learning how to defend screening situations, learning how to communicate in defensive transition, learning how to be alert off the ball, not just on the ball in their moment in time. But Kevin's teams are always going to be able to defend.
And what about, can I ask generically what the upside is for this team? Like if they do continue to get some depth, if Derik Queen continues to develop, what is this group capable of doing in the Big Ten this year, Coach?
If I knew that, I'd go to Vegas and I'd have someone feeding me grapes.
I get it.
They have a really good core group. They will continue to get better. They've got one of the better front courts in the country. If Julian continues to play the way he's playing and Derik plays the way he's playing. Their backcourt is improving, obviously. If Rodney can be consistent, and, again, people, it's like no different than like a quarterback. People can have more film on him now. They're going to figure out what they're going to give, what they're going to take away. But, they're an NCAA tournament team if they got to go out and do it. And the thing about that league is there's no rocking chair games.
Right.
So, I mean, it's like when you win a game, that's great. But really that league's all about how you handle losing a game. Because, if you don't handle it right, then one game becomes 2, becomes 3, becomes you lose 3 out of 5 or something like that, and it snowballs. That conference is all about learning from your last game and moving on. That's really what it's about.
No, I totally get that. What is the impact like of this now being? We obviously we see the teams from the West Coast coming in. How much do you think that will impact? I know it's not a ton of trips. It's not like you're doing that on a Tuesday and then coming home. But what will the impact of in-season cross-country travel be for programs like Maryland?
Well, it's going to be a lot worse for those programs in Southern California. I mean, they go back and forth. I can tell you that much. Yeah. They got to do it 4 times and 5 times. So I mean, that's where the problem comes. For going cross country, yeah. I mean, look, what it's going to be is you better bring your academic support people with you. I think the last time I checked, maybe I'm wrong, and maybe it is. We're so into pay for play that maybe you don't have to continue to go to class and do what you're supposed to do. All classes are online, so it makes no difference. So you're not missing class time. So yeah, I mean, as long as you're gonna leave earlier, you're gonna go out to California, and you know what? If you've got a Thursday game, you're probably gonna leave. Probably Tuesday after practice early in the morning and leave after practice. Get there Tuesday, Wednesday, have your practice on the road, and then play Thursday, and then coming back is going to be a little bit rough, but you'll probably red-eye it back coming home.
And obviously it maybe works out best for Maryland because their only trip is the Pacific Northwest, and they actually get that in the beginning of January. So maybe not in the throes of Big Ten. Yeah, right? Like that's probably the best case scenario for this season for having to do it.
That's a long trip, though, man.
It is.
That's a long trip.
Oh no,
Seattle and Oregon,
right?
Hey, you might, if you're charter and you're stopping to fill up in gas, unless you got one of those big hogs.
Yeah. Where the heck do you stop? You stop in like Nebraska or something like that on the way out there.
That's above my pay grade.
They didn't ask you to handle that, did they? At Seth on Hoops, of course, is how you can follow him. Seth, is there anything else we can plug for you?
No, all good. Just, Feast Week is great. SEC, ACC is coming. I'm obviously disappointed that we don't have Maryland in that, but, it's a great time of year. We've got more good teams, more older teams. I think it's going to be an incredible season of college basketball.
Well, and we enjoyed having you in studio for that game on Sunday. And, yeah, hopefully there'll be an excuse to have a game on ESPN again at some point in the future. Seth, appreciate you, man. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you for taking the time for us.
Same to you. Stay safe. My pleasure.